Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Hello.
Today, we're diving into someone really quite extraordinary. Terence McKenna.
Yes, McKenna. A fascinating figure.
Definitely. And if you've ever wondered how one person's, well, pretty radical ideas could actually shift how we think about consciousness, society, our place in the universe, then this is for you.
Absolutely. We're talking about Terence Kemp McKenna, born 1946, an American ethnobotanist, mystic, philosopher. Quite a mix.
A real polymath, almost. He became such a key figure in the late 20th century counterculture.
He did, known for these incredibly eloquent, sometimes, quite provocative lectures and writings.
And he blended things so seamlessly, didn't he? Like scientific thinking with mystical ideas and just brilliant storytelling.
Exactly. He touched on everything from psychedelics and shamanism to human evolution, consciousness itself, a huge range.
It really is a massive landscape to cover. So the big question we want to unpack is, how did this man, whose ideas were often, let's be honest, dismissed by mainstream academia,
Largely ignored.
how did he still manage to leave such a lasting mark? How does that happen? Let's get into it.
Okay. Well, his journey started pretty early. Born in Paonia, Colorado. He had his fascination with nature and psychology from a young age.
And there was a key moment around 14, right?
Yes, quite pivotal. He read Carl Jung's Psychology and Alchemy. Big stuff for a teenager.
Huge.
And around the same time, he saw an article in Life magazine about magic mushrooms. So those seeds were planted early. Plus, he started experimenting with cannabis then, too.
So the interest was definitely there from the start, then came university.
Briefly, he was at UC Berkeley in '65. That's where his interest in shamanism and psychedelics really deepened. But he didn't stay long.
The travel bit him.
It seems so. His travels were incredibly important. He went to Jerusalem in '67, met his future wife, Kathleen Harrison, there.
Ah, okay.
Then Nepal in '69, studied Tibetan painting, hallucinogenic shamanism, apparently even got involved in some hash smuggling.
Wow. Quite the adventurer.
Definitely. Then Southeast Asia, Indonesia, collecting butterflies. A real wanderer.
But the Amazon, 1970, that seems like the real turning point.
It absolutely was. His mother had passed away, and he went to the Colombian Amazon with his brother Dennis and some friends.
And they were looking for something specific.
Yeah, a DMT-containing plant, ukuhe. But instead, they found huge fields of Psilocybe cubensis mushrooms. Serendipity, I suppose.
And that led to, well, a very famous, maybe infamous experiment.
Exactly. In La Chorrera, Terence and Dennis tried this, let's call it a radical psychedelic experiment.
Attempting to bond Harman DNA with their own neural DNA, using vocal sounds.
Precisely. Harman being a compound in some psychedelic plants. It wasn't, lab science. It was deeply mystical, speculative.
And the outcome, for McKenna at least.
He claimed it connected him to the logos, an informative divine voice. He called it the mushroom, or the teaching voice.
That sounds profound, and that experience directly fueled his novelty theory.
It was the catalyst, yes, and it really launched him into the public sphere. By the early '80s, he started speaking publicly, became a real pioneer of the sort of modern psychedelic movement.
They called him the Timothy Leary of the 90s, didn't they?
They did. And the intellectual voice of rave culture. Later on, he bridged quite a few worlds.
He really did span different scenes. What was his core message then in those talks?
A huge emphasis on the felt presence of direct experience. That was key for him. Setting it apart from dogma, from just believing what you're told.
Sort of. Don't take my word for it. Find out yourself.
Exactly. And practically, he co-founded Botanical Dimensions in Hawaii with Kathleen Harrison, dedicated to preserving plants important in shamanism. A very real-world contribution.
That commitment to experience and nature, it seems central to everything, even how he faced his own death.
Very much so. He died relatively young, 53, from brain cancer in 2000. But he framed it as an opportunity to grow up, even a blessing, part of that cosmic flow he talked about.
Wow. A unique perspective. Okay, so his life journey is fascinating, but let's dig into the ideas themselves. Some were pretty controversial. The stoned ape theory, for instance.
Ah, yes, the stoned ape. Probably his most famous and perhaps most debated idea.
So the core hypothesis was
that early hominids eating psilocybin mushrooms was actually a key driver in the rapid evolution of human consciousness, language, culture. A huge claim.
He suggested specific benefits, right? Like better eyesight for hunting?
Yes. Enhanced visual acuity, also increased libido, which would help reproductive success.
And stimulating the language part of the brain, leading to visions, music, language.
That was the idea. And promoting social bonding, too. He tried to weave it all together, psychedelics, biology, culture, into this grand origin story.
But the scientific community wasn't convinced.
Not really, no. It's largely dismissed. Lack of solid empirical evidence is the main thing. Some say he misinterpreted studies.
And there are counterexamples.
Critics point to groups like the Aztecs or the Jivaro Yanomami in the Amazon. They used psychedelics but were also known for violence, sacrifice, which kind of challenges the idea that these substances automatically lead to ego dissolution and peace.
It highlights that tension between his visionary ideas and scientific validation, which brings us to novelty theory and time wave zero, another big one.
Definitely. This also came out of those Amazon experiences, apparently refined through studying the I Ching, the Chinese Book of Changes.
And the theory itself, what is novelty theory?
It proposes time isn't just linear, it's a fractal wave. And this wave shows an accelerating increase in what he called novelty.
Novelty meaning complexity, interconnectedness.
Something like that. The universe's organized complexity getting more complex faster and faster.
And this wave was heading somewhere specific.
Towards an omega point, he called it. A point of infinite novelty, a singularity. He initially calculated it for November 2012.
Then later aligned it with the Mayan calendar end date, December 21st, 2012.
Yes. It became quite famous or infamous around that time, but of course 2012 came and went.
And the critique.
Well, it's widely seen as pseudoscience. No empirical backing, reliance on numerology. And the prediction obviously failed. Plus, some criticism about a Eurocentric view of history in his analysis.
So, again, scientifically dismissed. But despite this, his advocacy for psychedelics clearly struck a chord. Why do you think that resonated so much?
I think it's because he focused on the experience. His core message was about the responsible use of natural psychedelics. Psilocybin, ayahuasca, DMT.
These tools.
Exactly. Tools for exploring your own consciousness, having visionary experiences, maybe even communicating with that logos he talked about.
He thought they could dissolve the dominator ego, get past cultural conditioning.
That was the idea, to enable a direct, unmediated experience of reality, deeper self-knowledge. He felt this was vital for what he called an archaic revival.
A return to older shamanic values as an antidote to modern alienation.
Precisely. He saw modern life as disconnected. And this was a way back to something essential.
And he wasn't subtle about how to do it. The heroic dose.
No, he wasn't. 5 dried grams of mushrooms.
Alone?
Empty stomach. Silent darkness.
Yeah.
Eyes closed. That was his recommendation for a profound experience.
He believed you had to be, quote, slain by the mushroom for the message to get through.
Yes. And he went further, speculating about transdimensional travel, meeting higher dimensional entities, and ecology of souls.
Even suggesting mushrooms might be intelligent alien life.
He mused on it, yes.
Yeah.
He wasn't afraid to push the boundaries of speculation.
Which leads us perfectly into DMT. He had a lot to say about that.
Oh, absolutely. He called DMT the most powerful, but also the most benign hallucinogen, known for being incredibly intense, fast-acting, but very short, like 10, 15 minutes.
And his descriptions of the experience are just wild.
They really are. The self-transforming elf machines or Jules self-dribbling basketballs made out of light. It's incredibly vivid imagery.
It's something from another reality entirely.
And he described them communicating through a language that you can see, making objects out of language, even inducing glossolalia, speaking in tongues.
He felt these encounters were more real than this world.
That's what he claimed. And he wrestled with what they were. Extraterrestrials, beings from a parallel dimension, ancestor spirits offering a glimpse of death, a necroptic experience.
So many possibilities. And there's a biological link too, isn't there? DMT is found in the brain.
Yes, it's an endogenous neurotransmitter found naturally in the human brain. Interestingly, highest concentrations seem to occur during REM sleep, especially in the early morning hours, 3 to 4:30 a.m.
Suggesting a connection to dreaming.
It certainly suggests a link, though the exact function isn't fully understood. It adds another layer of complexity.
Beyond the substances themselves, though, there was this overarching message about rejecting authority, wasn't there?
Hugely important for him. Reject authority. Authority is a lie and an abomination. Very famous McKenna quote.
Trust yourself. Trust your experience.
Absolutely. His view was basically, nobody really knows what's going on. True understanding comes from your own direct experience, not from institutions, not from gurus.
He had that great line, if you want to teach or try a waterfall or a mushroom,
or a mountain wilderness, or a storm-pounded seashore, nature and direct experience as the true teachers.
And he saw institutions, government, religion, ideologies like Marxism, Catholicism, as driven by what?
Control, 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 he said. He saw them as mechanisms that poison individual authenticity.
He even took aim at capitalism.
He did, called it anti-human because it assumes endless resources to exploit, which leads to, in his words, chewing up the ground we're standing on. He argued for a dematerialized future.
Moving away from consumption, and he linked this planetary destruction to a kind of collective psychosis.
Yes, quite provocatively. He suggested humanity shows psychotic behavior because we can't emotionally connect with the consequences of our actions on the planet.
And psychedelics were a potential treatment.
A potential pharmacological intervention, as he put it, a way to change our minds, to foster that missing emotional connection. A radical idea, certainly.
Definitely challenging. So looking back at his overall impact, it wasn't just niche academic debate, was it?
Not at all. He really helped shape the modern psychedelic movement, moving it from the sort of 60s recreational vibe towards more intentional exploration, self-discovery, spiritual growth.
And his book, The Magic Mushroom Grower's Guide, that had a practical impact.
Hugely instrumental. It made home cultivation much more accessible, popularizing it for a whole generation interested in exploring psilocybin.
And his voice, his ideas seeped into popular culture, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Especially rave culture. His lectures were sampled heavily in electronic dance music.
Bringing these complex philosophical ideas to a completely new audience.
Exactly. Connecting that rave experience, in a way, back to ancient shamanic rituals, the pursuit of altered states. So even though academia dismissed some theories,
his charisma, his curiosity, his critique of modern life, it ensured he remained a significant figure in counterculture.
definitely a lasting presence.
And that core message he took from psychedelics, nothing lasts. That seems quite profound.
It is. That acceptance of impermanence he felt doesn't diminish life. It actually enriches it, opens the heart. It's a powerful takeaway.
So summing up for our listeners, Terence McKenna really pushed boundaries, didn't he?
He absolutely did. Challenged conventional thinking, urged people to question authority, to seek truth through direct, sometimes mind-altering experience.
And his vision, controversial as it often was, it still echoes today in conversations about consciousness, spirituality, where humanity might be heading.
It really does. His questions remain relevant.
He once said, "The world is not at all as we suppose it to be." It makes you think, what if those extraordinary realities he talked about aren't far away?
What if they're just waiting to be perceived? If we could just dissolve the boundaries of our ordinary minds, as he suggested.
What might you discover if you dared to look beyond the familiar, something to ponder?